All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to That Triathlon Show, the first ever episode that we have here. And today I'm super excited to welcome Steph Saullo onto the show. And Steph is a registered dietitian and a performance nutritionist at Ritter Sports Performance. Before we dive into the chat with Steph, I want to give you a little rundown of what the show is going to be structured like. So we're basically going to have just a 20 or so minute interview segment where we're going to be really actionable and give you plenty of advice for how and give you things that you can apply in your own, in this case, nutrition in your triathlon training and racing. And so we're not going to go into much fluff or history or stuff like that. It's just going to be actionable advice. And after that, we have a quick rapid fire question segment where some of you have actually voted for the questions that you want us to ask Steph, and other guests as well. So that's going to be cool. And finally, we have the live Q&A at the end of the show. And remember, you can post your questions during the entire interview in the comments below the video. And some of you have already posted some questions via email to me, or some of you have signed up for notifications. And that's another way that you can submit your questions beforehand. And that's especially useful if you can't catch us live. But it's really cool in the future if you can catch us live, because I think that the live Q&A segment is going to be something that can be really valuable for a lot of the listeners. So with that said, let's get into the show. Welcome, Steph. I'm super happy to have you.
Thanks for having me.
So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do?
Yeah, sure. So I am, like you said, a registered dietitian, a performance nutritionist here in the United States, but I work with people, I've worked with people abroad as well, remotely, because we have nice technology that can do that. I work with mostly endurance athletes, but I have some strength athletes, some competitive bodybuilder, or some, not bodybuilders, some competitive weightlifters that I work with as well. So I think my performance nutrition runs the gamut, although like I said, mostly endurance sports come my way.
Okay, that's really good to hear. And obviously our audience is they're endurance athletes and triathletes mostly. And yeah, we have an action-packed show here, and let's dive into the first question. And what I want to ask you about first is macronutrients, because there's so much going on about macronutrients. Every single day you read in newspapers about fats and carbs and proteins and stuff. So now I want to hear your take about macronutrients for endurance athletes specifically, and things like ratios, the correct ratios, if there is something like that for different kinds of endurance athletes at different ability levels. So feel free to dive quite deep into this topic.
Yeah, I think you nailed it right there, and in opening up the question, because there is so much information out there and it's sometimes conflicting, right? So it's important to take a step back, because nutrition is, you don't need to get caught up in the numbers. I mean, yes, we do talk about ratios. We do have some science to support some ratios, but it's not really that important to get hung up on the ratios, especially if you're not competing at an elite level. If you're competing for fun, if you are an age grouper, it's not life or death. It's really about really setting a foundation. And I know this sounds so silly, but I go back to this all of the time. It's setting a foundation of fruits and vegetables and lean protein and whole grains and good fats and getting an adequate fluid, and getting hung up on the numbers is not necessary at all, really. If you think about, I like to tell people each meal as sort of a plate. And I know that we eat on plates, but we don't really eat in compartments, right? We eat in sometimes mixed dishes. If you think of spaghetti and meatballs, like that's all sort of on the plate together. But if you were to picture your plate sort of divided up, you would want most of it to be fruits and vegetables. You would want, 25-ish% of it to be protein. And then you'd want some of it to be carbohydrates. Now, if there are really high intensity days, if you're working really at a high intensity, maybe for a longer duration and a high volume, then you want to shift what your plate looks like a little bit. So maybe you're taking in a little bit of less of fruits and vegetables and more of those whole grains and more of those carbohydrate rich foods, and fruits and vegetables fall into the carbohydrate category, but we usually separate them out when we talk about the quote unquote performance plate. Like, what's the ideal performance plate? And that's, you know, depending on whether it's a high intensity day or a low intensity day, but most of the time it's a solid foundation of fruits and vegetables and whole grains and lean protein and good fat and adequate fluid, and getting hung up on the numbers that isn't needed. If that kind of answers your question.
That's a really good point. And one analogy that I heard was that most people can get 80% of the benefits from optimizing their nutrition with the knowledge that they knew as a 6-year-old, because it's basically just agnostic healthy eating. So
you nailed it right there. Like, you have to set the foundation of a healthy diet first, and then comes your performance diet. If your diet is crap, then you can't implement a performance diet. You need to work on setting up a solid, healthy foundation diet first, and then work up to some of those more intricate things, maybe nutrient timing. I know that you want to talk a little bit about that too. So getting into those things later, that's important, especially if you're trying to get to the next level. But if you're not even there, if you don't even have a healthy foundation first, then you have to work on that first.
Yeah, that's great. So let's say that we are somebody who has been struggling with getting that foundation in place. So what are some tips that you would give a person like that for setting up that foundation for really good, healthy eating?
Yeah, the first thing I would recommend is try to get in some fruits and vegetables at every single meal. I say every single meal because most of the time we end up at the end of the day and we say, oh crap, I forgot to eat some vegetables today. I've only eaten X, Y, and Z and none of it was vegetables. And fruit's usually easier to get in than vegetables. Most people lack more on vegetables, but at least here in the US. But if you try to incorporate some fruits and vegetables at every single meal, that's a good step. You know, and it doesn't have to be a lot. And we're not talking a whole plate full of vegetables. We're saying, eat a side of broccoli here, incorporate some spinach into your omelet, or add a banana to your breakfast, or throw in a sliced apple, or grab a can of mandarin oranges. Like, it doesn't have to be complicated. Just you have to try to focus on it for a little while. And then after a while, it becomes a habit. And then you don't even have to think about it. But it takes time to develop the habit. You're not going to do this overnight and be like, oh, boom, I'm healthy now. I started incorporating fruits and vegetables into my diet because I did it for one day. No, it's going to take some thought, especially if you're not used to doing it, and you have to remind yourself to do it every single day at every single meal. And like I said, it doesn't have to be one thing is better than nothing, and that's a step in the right direction. And once you get there, then like I said, it becomes more of a habit, and you don't even think about it.
Yeah. So do you have any specific hacks or tricks that you can, or systems in place that you tell people that you work with for how to set up those habits?
Sometimes I tell people to set reminders on their phone just because they always have their phone. And I know it sounds silly, but just setting a simple reminder is remind me every day at 8 a.m. to eat a piece of fruit with my breakfast, or whatever time it is you eat your breakfast or eat your lunch, or, so that you can remind yourself. Or do you pack your lunch the night before you go to work? Set yourself a reminder so that you can do that. And if you really have trouble remembering, a simple reminder on your phone is probably the easiest solution, especially if you're, not good at writing things down or putting Post-it notes on the refrigerator or whatever else you could do. But since most people always have their phone with them, I just tell them to put reminders on their phone.
Yeah, that's really smart. So moving into, as you alluded to, we are going to talk about nutrient timing, but we can also combine that with, in general, just what you eat, and continue on with this diet conversation. But if you want to get to the next level, as you said, and get those final percentage points out of your nutrition and really optimize it for performance, then what are the main things that you would tell an endurance athlete to do?
First, I would say, okay, we're set the foundation, develop a healthy diet. And then second, you want to ensure that you're getting an adequate energy. Especially, I know sometimes especially triathletes, they go through a phase of, many times they compete at a different weight than they train at, right? You're working up to maybe cut a little bit of weight before you actually go into a competition. And sometimes that hurts you. So making sure that you get in adequate energy so that you can perform at your best is really important. The other thing that can help sort of optimize your performance is to incorporate some training with lower carbohydrate. And when I say that, I mean training in jeopardy, but perhaps take a few days that are maybe lower intensity or shorter duration sessions that you're working on and work on eating lower carbohydrate that day so that your body gets used to lower carbohydrate availability and you'd be able to not have to refuel as often, and you'd be able to work off your fat stores for longer. So again, it's about incorporating some of those lower carbohydrate days into your training sessions in order to get used to training at a lower level, and then you'll be able to use your fat stores for longer. But number one, making sure you're training with adequate energy. I think that's one common mistake that people make, is that they just forget to eat enough, and then they wonder why they're not able to compete at a level they want to compete at because they're not getting in enough energy. And the other thing I come back to is science is slow sometimes, and sometimes we're just little guinea pigs working on ourselves, because we have science that says one thing doesn't mean it's the best approach for you. So if you try something and it doesn't work, that means you might have to try something else. And if your friend is doing something or your teammate's doing something and it works for them, it may not work for you. So allowing adequate time to prepare yourself and to try things to make sure that that's ideal for you and that you're actually getting some benefit out of it is really important, because you could read research all day, but it may not be applicable to you. You may be the outlier. You may be, research is, based on sometimes a very small set of people, and sometimes it's not the exact population that you are. So you might not fit into that category. So it's really about being pragmatic and being practical and not getting hung up on what the science says, but being practical in your everyday life.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and that's something that I can be guilty of myself, just trying to be too focused on the analytics and what we know based on research. But you make an excellent argument there that you are not necessarily the average that the research shows. So yeah, you can be the outlier and need to work with a different approach than what is supposedly the best. So about the nutrient timing that we were talking about, what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, there are various approaches to nutrient timing, but in general, you want to think about, let's say, first going back to, okay, when are you exercising, or when are you training, when are you competing, and then working back from there. So you want to have, some sort of meal, let's say 4 hours before. Well, if it's early in the morning, then maybe that meal is the night before. And then allowing adequate time in the morning to eat something, whether that's, a small breakfast, depending on how your body reacts. And again, going back to, I think I say this every single time I have a talk with somebody, your nutrition training is just as important as your physical training. If you don't practice your nutrition, you're going to be at a loss. So knowing what works for you and what doesn't work for you is super important. So incorporating that into your training plan weeks, months beforehand is where you need to be. So hour mark before, or even that night before, that's more of a complete meal. So you've got whole grains and fruits and vegetables and lean protein and good fats, lots of food groups. As you approach exercise, the meals get probably smaller, usually, depending on how much you can handle, and they become more focused on carbohydrates by themselves. So if you were to consume something, 2 hours before, maybe you can handle some protein. An hour before, maybe you can handle a little bit of protein, but that carbohydrate is the most important piece. And then 15 minutes before, you want just carbohydrate. And then during activity, it's going to be dependent upon how long you're going to be exercising for or doing that activity for. If it's something less than an hour, most of the time you don't need anything besides water. If it's beyond an hour, then you need to think about how long you're going for. You know, we're talking about, you know, really long events versus really short events. You know, triathlons run the gamut. So really thinking about, and then working in what you need. So it really depends. Usually, you know, if you have an event that's 3 hours or less, then usually you're getting by with carbohydrate, electrolytes, and water. Anything after that, then maybe you're also incorporating some protein just because you're also hungry. And going back to what I said earlier about maybe training some of those lower carbohydrate days to get your body used to working off those fat stores, and then when you're able to go for longer without refueling and working off those fat stores for longer. And then nutrient timing after, it's always important to refuel no matter what. And again, going back to the ratios, does it matter? Maybe. Does it? The important thing is that you actually eat something, because you're probably hungry and you want to start that rebuilding and repairing process, and also, you know, putting back that glycogen that you lost and that you used. So putting back carbohydrate, putting back protein after, and putting back fluid and electrolytes is important after. So that was sort of really quick going before, during, and after, but use just a good snapshot of what you need to consider when. And it really ultimately comes down to how long is the activity lasting for, you know, what is your intensity, and how much can you actually tolerate.
Yeah, that's really excellent stuff, Steph. And yeah, I think it was a really great snapshot actually, and people can get a lot of value from that. So the next question that I have is about supplements. So are there any supplements that triathletes or endurance athletes should consider taking, or that are maybe they should check whether they need or not? And are there some supplements that people should generally avoid that are maybe overused?
Yeah, so there are quite a few supplements that I think are beneficial, especially in endurance capacity. One of them is caffeine. Caffeine can help to improve mental alertness and help to improve maybe prolonged exercise. You want to take caffeine 60 minutes before your activity begins, and then the effects are going to last for 3 to 4 hours. So if you're engaging in an event that lasts for longer than 3 or 4 hours, then maybe you're taking in more caffeine during the event to sort of boost it up. Okay, so it all comes down to, again, how long is that event or how long is that training session? Another supplement that I think is not utilized enough in endurance sports, but is becoming more popular, and that's creatine. Creatine can help to not only enhance your strength, which I think it's more commonly known for, but also to help boost some of your power. So getting that creatine in and getting your creatine stores up there is important. So you're not starting to take creatine the week before your event. You're really working on working creatine into your exercise and training plan earlier on. Another one would be beta-alanine, and I think this is one that's a little bit newer on the horizon. We've been studying it for a little while, but I think not a lot of people have been talking about it. But this is another one where beta-alanine helps you to feel like you can go a little bit longer, or not. Your exertion doesn't feel as if you don't feel as if you've exerted yourself as much as you have. So it helps sort of take out that piece of your perceived exertion, if that makes sense. But again, you want to focus on taking beta-alanine. You need to load it, so you have to focus on taking that before you get to that event time. You know, you don't take it the day before or even a week before. You need some time, at least 4 weeks, to load that into your plan. A couple other ones that may be beneficial on the endurance athlete side are tart cherry juice, which can help with muscle recovery and soreness. And then the beetroot, which I think is pretty common in the endurance area. Although I think a lot of the beetroot research is focused on some of the more shorter duration events. But again, this goes back to practicality. If you've tried it and it works for you, and by all means, you know, you feel comfortable taking it and you're not taking too much and you're getting that supplement from a reputable source, then by all means, you should take it. Another one that sort of just back pocket is a multivitamin, and it's not something that everybody needs, and you have to look at your diet as overall. But some people don't get in enough nutrients, so I like to look at a multivitamin as sort of an insurance plan. So you can take it and boom, you have your vitamins and minerals there. It is not a substitute for fruits and vegetables. It is not a substitute for a healthy diet. But like I said, it's sort of an insurance plan. So you're like, oh no, I maybe didn't get in all of my nutrients today, but you have that multivitamin to sort of, back you up. So I think those are the ones that I think are maybe the most common or could be the most helpful. And then of course there's like omega-3s. Of course, if you don't eat a lot of fatty fish, we know that there's a lot of health benefits to having omega-3s in your diet. So just having those around is important. And if you're eating enough fish, fatty fish specifically, then you don't need to take a supplement. But if you're not, then you may consider taking an omega-3 supplement. Those I think would be the useful ones. The ones that are probably not so useful, there's a lot of them, but I would say that anything that claims to do miracles is one you should stay away from. And there are a lot of them out there. I mean, we can't even really keep up with some of the supplements that are coming out every day. And it's unfortunate that there's an irresponsible industry out there, but there's also a responsible industry. So you just really have to be careful. So any crazy claims to, make you think that you can improve your performance beyond what you ever thought you could is probably too good to be true. So leave that one on the shelf. And some of these might be like things like pre-workout supplements. That are pretty popular. Fat burners that are really probably things you should just stay away from. I think that really comes down to the most unuseful is the ones that make the most claims. I just want to say one thing about supplements is because it can be a problem. You just want to make sure that what you're putting into your body and you're getting your supplements from a trusted and reputable source and that they're third-party verified so that you can be sure that they have what they say they have. It doesn't necessarily mean that you won't test positive for a banned substance in a drug test if you do have to have a drug test, but it can give you some better assurance that you won't test positive, because most of those companies that are using third-party verification systems are less likely to have banned substances in those products, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And you told us a bit about the ones that the supplements that we should stay away from, but in a broader sense, are there any nutritional myths or fads that maybe athletes should stay away from, or that you would at least encourage a cautious approach to, or that there might be, they claim to be more than they actually are? Anything you want to debunk?
A lot of them out there. And I would say diet, quote unquote diet, is going to probably give you some sort of result if you follow it to a T for a long period of time. You have to go back to whether or not it's sustainable. And I think, it changes year to year, but it seems like this year, in the past couple years, there's been a lot of paleo followers and clean eating followers. I don't really know what that term means, but you should be wary of claims in general. So even like just the supplements, but even diets that make claims to do things really fast are probably not going to be a sustainable approach. They may work in the short term, but probably not for the long term. And just going back to, there's no pill, there's no potion, there's no magic solution. Some people come to me and think I have a magic wand that I'm hiding, and I don't. I really don't. I really have no magic wand in my back pocket that will be like, poof, you are now the best athlete ever, and I didn't even have to do anything except wave my magic wand. That's not what I do. And I think a lot of people think that is what I do, and they're really looking for that solution. And unfortunately, it doesn't exist. If it did, if it did, I wouldn't have a job, right? And so just remembering that there's no quick fix solution, and it's, you know, it's ever changing year to year. But any fad diet that you hear about more than likely is not a sustainable option for a long period of time. Like I said, it may work for a short period of time. You should be like, Steph, I tried that and it works. Awesome. Well, did you follow it for a really long period of time? And if the answer is no, then okay, I'll give you that it worked, but is it something you want to do forever to keep your performance where it's at? Then probably not.
Yeah, that's good. So let's now move into the rapid fire question segment, and then we're going to take some listener questions. So
Okay.
yeah, just some 5 quick questions. What's your favorite book, blog, or resource related to endurance sports or nutrition?
Yeah, so I think my favorite resource would have to be the Guru Performance We Do Science podcast. And I would say it's not specifically endurance related, but it is performance nutrition related, and there are various performance nutrition topics. And he does a fabulous job of bringing experts on to talk about topics from, you name it, he's covered it. So I think that's probably my favorite resource for nutrition in general. Yeah.
What's your favorite snack?
My favorite snack. Can it be an unhealthy snack?
It can be an unhealthy snack, yeah.
Well, my favorite snack would be a good chocolate chip cookie. I love a good chocolate chip cookie.
That's the right answer. So what's your favorite piece of gear or equipment for sports or nutrition? Cooking, maybe.
I think my favorite piece of gear. Let's see, my favorite piece of gear. I have a pretty cool light on my bike that I really like. I don't know that it's actually, it would be my favorite. It's pretty bright. I can charge it with a USB plug. I don't have to replace the batteries. It can take it on and off really easily. So I'm going to go with my light, and I have no idea what brand it is or where I got it from, but it's my favorite piece of equipment.
What did your daily meal plan look like yesterday?
Okay, yesterday I had for breakfast some coffee, and then I had yogurt with sliced almonds and some shredded coconut. And then for lunch I had a quesadilla-ish type wrap. I heated up my wrap in the oven with turkey and cheese, and then had leftover Brussels sprouts. And then we had chocolate cake left over from an event this weekend, so I had chocolate cake after lunch. And then for dinner I'm a big I'm a big breakfast for dinner person, so we had eggs and over vegetables or something in the fridge, so we threw those in there. And then later on I have these yogurts, like chocolate yogurts, that I like to eat at night because they're like sweet, but they're yogurt, so they're not like eating ice cream, but they're delicious. So I had that later. I think that was my meal plan yesterday.
Cool.
And you noticed that there was not enough fruits and vegetables. See, I'm not perfect.
Okay, it's okay to sleep from time to time. You can still have a generally healthy eating habit and still be allowed to make those sorts of slips.
That's right.
Finally, do you have a productivity hack that helps you fit everything into your life?
Yeah, I wish. No, I'm just kidding. I think my productivity hack would be putting everything on my calendar, and I mean everything, cleaning on my calendar, so that, you know, if it's on the calendar, it means there's a time for it and it's going to get done. So everything goes on the calendar, it has a time. There's a little ding alert that says it's time to do this now, and calendar.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I'm actually starting to do that myself. I heard it on the productivity podcast that I'm listening to, and it's a really powerful habit to schedule everything.
Yes.
So yeah, let's get into some listener questions. And remember, if you have any questions, you can still post them in the comments below this video. But we're going to start with the ones that we already have through email. So the first one is, "Hi Steph, I'm afraid I've gotten into the habit of binge eating at night. It happens around once or twice per week, and usually when I'm pretty tired, whether it be from hard training or lack of sleep. What can I do to break this habit?"
All right. Well, this is a very common habit. And the good thing is that you've recognized that it's happening, and you've recognized how often that it's happening, which is usually the hardest part. So to help combat this, you might want to take a look at what you're eating during the day. Most people binge eat at night because they're not eating enough during the day. And I don't know what kind of activities are going on, if you're training really hard, or if you're trying to lose weight, or if you're trying to gain weight, whatever it may be. Just take a step back and look at what you're eating during the day and try to pinpoint, are you feeling hungry during the day that you're not paying attention to? And then that's therefore causing you to overeat at night, which is usually the case. In many cases, you binge eat because you're bored and you have nothing else to do. But in most cases, especially if you pinpointed it a couple of times, it just may be a case of just under eating at other times during the day. So I encourage you to sort of be very self-aware during the day. And I work with a lot of people to try to get them back in tune to their hunger cues, which is not very easy sometimes, but really taking a step back to say, every time before I eat, assessing whether or not you're hungry, how hungry you actually are, and then halfway through your meal, assessing your hunger again. Are you still hungry? Are you, feeling sickly full? Or are you taking a moment to just be in the present and assess your hunger is a really helpful tool to get your body to really understand what your body is trying to tell you, because your body is really smart, right? We've lived a long time to get here, and our hunger cues are one of those things that have helped us to do that.
Yeah, that's great. And the final question, because we're running out of time, that we're going to take is also related to the health side of eating. And it is John that's asking, "Steph, I've been raised on fast food and snacks my entire life. Now, as a 35-year-old, I'm getting into triathlon and I'm doing sports for the first time in my life. I want to get into healthy eating, but there's so much information out there that I feel overwhelmed about where to start. What are your top 2 or 3 tips for how I should change my diet?" And you already covered some of these, but just go through them quickly again.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Don't try to tackle it all at once. Don't go cold turkey and be like, I'm never eating fast food again, because really you're going to fail and then you're going to feel bad about it. And we don't want that. So take it one step at a time, one meal at a time, perhaps. Maybe you start with breakfast and you incorporate a fruit or a vegetable at breakfast. Like, that's one step in a healthier direction, right? And then the next week, if you were able to do it for a whole week of incorporating a fruit or vegetable at breakfast, then you go for lunch, or maybe you start doing it at snacks, but tackle it one meal at a time. And know that, you can eat fast food or eat out and make healthful choices. It's just about making the right choices. You don't have to be slaving over a hot stove every single night making dinner to be healthy. You just need to know what choices to make. And there are plenty of options out there, especially today. There are way more options out there now than there ever have been before. So just knowing what those choices are, and usually that's, choosing fruits and vegetables, choosing things that are grilled or broiled, or not things that are fried or in heavy sauces, and just knowing what choices to make will put you in a better place than you were before.
Yeah, excellent. And so we're going to finish off there, but Steph, before we do, can you tell the listeners where they can find out more about you and how they can get in touch, and what can you do to help them if there's somebody that's interested in, whether it be to get that to that next level with their triathlon by optimizing their nutrition, or whether it be somebody who's who's just getting into triathlon and healthy eating in general, and wants to get the foundation in place, how does it work when you take on clients? What kind of work do you do with your clients?
Yeah, so there's a couple different approaches. So one, you can find me at rittersp.com. You just go to the website. You can find my picture there. You can email me, rittersp.com. So there's two different ways you can go about working with me. One is one-on-one. And that, you can go to rittersp.com, and there's all the nutrition services there that we offer. But then there's another product, if you will, that would be pretty helpful to many athletes, no matter what level that they currently are. And it's called Athlete Nutrition RX. You get access to me, you get customized nutrient targets, prefer both high and low intensity days. I've got recipes, meal planning templates. There's a private forum and webinars on various topics, and you can sign up for a free trial. So all you need to do is go to rittersp.com/nutrition RX, and you can sign up for a free trial there, and check it out. Because I think, it's a great sort of product to give, like I said, athletes at various levels access to me and access to tools to help them really get to the next level wherever they may already be.
Yeah, that's great. Great stuff, Steph. I really enjoyed this conversation with you, and you've been giving some really useful insight to the audience, and I hope that they find it useful as well. With that, let's end the show for today, and thank you to everybody who tuned in and listened. And Steph, thank you so much for coming on. It was a real pleasure to talk to you.
Sure. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.